Okay, so I would entertain a motion on our Mission Valley Power Utility Board appointment.
I'd make the motion to approve Gordon Fine and Cindy Benson to the, like, I apologize. The Mission Valley Utility Board. I was going to say the terms, 3-year terms. Thank you.
Okay, motion by Martin, second by Carol. All those in favor? Okay, motion carries unanimous. Next up on the agenda, we have Tom, Dan, and Les. Looks like Tom is still connecting. Dan, are you there?
I'm here. Tom's having some technical issues, it looks like.
Okay, did you want to start presenting or is Tom leading the conversation?
I believe either Tom or Lester will be, since it's talking about the regulation changes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and give Tom a second to see if he can connect.
I'll run over really quick and check it. You're still waiting?
I think we're up. Are you?
Yeah. There's some other-
Tom, you're up. Can you hear us?
Good
Good morning. It's all you.
Okay. I'm sure Lester and Dan will be joining us here shortly.
They're both on.
Okay. Based on our the chair's meeting last Monday, and the consensus, at least for those participating in the meeting that morning, was to try to frame the fee increases into the regulations for that to go forward at a minimum. And so I did that and submitted that back to you for review, and it's formatted for the $100 fee increases for camping and the general conservation license for non-members that reside off of the reservations. So Montana residents that live off the reservation and out-of-state residents. That was a $100 fee increase for those 2 categories. And then every non-member 18 and older would see the $100 camping stamp increase from 20. And it's formatted for the ordinance itself on how it would be inserted into the regulations. That's the way we present it to the public for the 30-day notice of public involvement in the concluding hearing. And that's easy to have council consider comment and then edits to it or changes and then final adoption for the regulations. So if the council was to adopt something today or recommend something to go forward for the TAPO requirement, these at a minimum would be consideration unless you want to change anything in there or add to it. And then it would be a 30-day process and a hearing concluding it. Council could then take action based upon public comment, and then it would become law 30 days later once they approve something. And so the schedule's timed pretty well right now still for us to conclude everything and be able to go to the printer for regulations and be able to meet the March 1st deadline. The other item that was, I think Vice Chair Anita Matz wanted to look at the different maps that might be out there. And so Lester provided the recommendations that we had provided back in 2000, I believe, for the forest plan. And that's part of your consideration if you want to add any closed areas to the proposed regulations or not. And then, of course, what we talked about at the chairs meeting was some of the administrative items we can do anytime. We can add staffing for gate guards or wardens as council sees fit based on your discussions with law enforcement and the other closures that might be in play. But that's separate from the regulation setting process that we have to do annually.
Thanks, Tom. Council, have any questions, comments? Go ahead, Martin.
Thank you. And I know that a major point of conversation was the sites down near Perma Bridge. I know that probably won't be something that, you know, this will cover, and so I'm sure it's a little bit off topic, but, you know, just due to the sensitive nature of those, you know, I would really want to take a hard look at that area and at minimum attempt to protect that, you know, those sites. And so maybe that's a discussion that we have, but I want to make sure that we don't forget what our elders are asking and strongly recommending. Thank you.
So is it
Have a comment.
that we need to proceed with the, oh, go ahead, Lynn, sorry.
Thank you, Ellie. Yeah, Tom, I know last week I mentioned Chief Cliff. The Elmo community was very adamant that we start looking at different plans on how we can close access to Chief Cliffs. And I know the difficulty there is the main road that goes over the top. There is a public easement on that road, but those roads, the tribal roads that connect with that into the Chief Cliff area, I think was what they were referring to on closing those roads, if all possible. But I think it would be really good idea if we maybe could schedule another time with the Kootenai Elders Advisory Group and have them clarify exactly which areas they would like closed, because there are a lot of sites in that area that they just want to keep people away from. And the difficulty with that is, you know, we have a non-member that has started a business renting ATVs out, and it's in that particular area. And once they get their ATVs, they just head up into the mountains and really don't know where they're going. But most of the time they end up where they're not supposed to be. But it's just, yeah, it's a tough one, but I would really like to make sure that these areas that that our elders are referring to are addressed. All right, thanks, Tom.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Tom.
so in the previous documents we provided council for consideration, we had some different options besides what you look at, what the 2004's plan states in it. So you could do areas where we are just closing down traffic on roads. So the area could remain open on foot, and you're closing the road down to the general public. And the only people that can use the road would be the landowner, which would be a tribal member for administrative purposes. The situation where we did that, you already have one place in place that's that way. And that's the mitigation parcel that we bought down below Dixon called the Weed Ranch at the sinkholes. And so the sinkholes management is allowing the tribal membership to use motorized vehicles for the considerations that we have for subsistence uses and other purposes. But the general public, because of sheer number and impacts to the resource, and potentially off-roading, et cetera, we have signed that and try to maintain that as a private road, but the general public can walk in, they could bicycle in, they could ride in on horseback, but they cannot use a wheel, they can't use a motorized vehicle to come in on that roadway. That could be a consideration for a lot of landscape, that the issues that you're presenting or we've heard in that area could be. You could try to do that kind of a scenario where we close just the road down. And I know a long time ago we did that once also on the it was actually a road closure we did for everybody. It was actually our own people that were impacting the road going up into the Ferry Basin area over by the Whiskey Trail Ranch. And the landowner there was complaining just a sheer number of traffic. Tribal hunters were coming across, started braiding a path across his land, and then we just closed the road for a while for an emergency closure. That's another tool also, is to look at emergency closures of a road because the road's being impacted, or there's certain resources that wouldn't be permanent. That's another tool you could do at any point in time under our emergency regulations. But a lot of the landscape, an example of that Chief Cliff or Big Draw urban area would be, a lot of you just simply close it all to non-member trespass. You could do the entire landscape, but wouldn't allow them to even walk in. That's another option. When we developed these proposed limited public access areas that you have in your packet today, back in the forest plan in 2000, we were looking at some different criteria at that point in time. We weren't facing this great migration of people moving to Western Montana in 2000. We had a lot of other issues, but not the sheer number of exceeding carrying capacity of certain of our sites, because there are just so many people. They're all legal, but there are just so many people, it causes a crowding scenario, and it reduces people's enjoyment on the landscape. It reduces our membership, the owners of the land, their enjoyment on the landscape. So it's just too many people. When you get to that scenario, then you really have to be able to, just like going to the Sun Highway, limit the number of people that are entered. And you do that through limiting maybe the recreational tools they use. They can't use a boat, or they can't use a motorcycle, or they can't use an ATV. You can whittle down the amount of use on the landscape by narrowing what's lawful for them to use on the landscape, or you simply say no trespassing. So there's a lot of different tools for council to consider for these various areas. When we increase the fee schedule like this, we will anticipate a downward turn in the visitation level right away, especially on the camping side of it. The recreational side, will there be those folks that rent those ATVs out of that business next to our RV park there, the Big Arm Resort? They are required to have a rec permit to rent those items from that business. So rather than paying the 3-day rec permit fee that was there before that's going to be jacked up quite a bit. Does that make that business viable anymore? Does that make his business continue on the landscape when we go from $20 to $100 for that use? So I don't know. That we'll have to wait and see what happens, but it'll be a dramatic effect on that business because most of that customer base for that ATV rental, UTV rental business is out of state.
So Tom, would it be the recommendation that we kind of just sit back and see what happens with that increased rate then, and we can revisit that later?
You know, that's right now, you based on the consensus you have to carry these fee increases forward, you are going to have a response to it, and it should be favorable to the conflict that we've been hearing from the membership. Your option would be is to, if it's not working, and say it gets worse in a particular area, we can do emergency regulations and close an area. You have that absolute decision-making authority to do that at any point in time. The thing about these annual regulations that's so nice about it is we have time to plan it, we print it, we get it out there, we get a lot of advance notice. So it's not a shock to somebody. They don't know, they purchase something, then they realize that it's illegal for them to do it. That's where you get into some really negative press and negative perceptions, especially when you're quasi in the tourism business, like with the tribes now own in Big Arm. So it's a delicate walk, but the more advanced notice you can do and let people know that, you know, yeah, I used to buy a rec permit to go do this particular activity. And if we have advanced notice and it's in our annual regulations, they can't do that anymore, then they're not likely to buy that or not likely to visit our properties. To do an emergency closure after the fact, say midsummer, and maybe they had already bought their rec permit and their activity privilege is lawful, and then we change it on a mid-game, that's where you get a lot of negative negativity for resource protection and management. Not that it's right, but it's just simply you just have to absorb that kind of a hit. So yes, we can do stuff, but we'd want to make sure that we have good examples of what the impact of the resources are, have sound resource management principles behind us, and no doubt we would. Any decision that the tribal council would make based on staff recommendation or the membership, it'll be appropriate. It's just timeliness is a consideration for the annual regulations.
I think I understand clearly that today you're asking us to consider approving the changes in the fees, basically, and that this would go out for public comment. Is that correct? Okay, and then you commented that some of the administrative measures, such as temporary or permanent closures and use of gate guards and wardens, that could be addressed at a future date. Is that right?
Absolutely. As far as staffing or those administrative items, I would recommend that if we do emergency closures for public visitation, that we be very diligent with that we would want to make sure that we have really sound footing on that for us, and that would be it. But absolutely, the administrative stuff as far as signage, adding more wardens, temporary gate guards, those items we can deal with at any point in the future and bring that to bear more than we are now.
Okay, thank you. And then just in addition, the impacts on commercial operations, I'm thinking that there's probably a few tribal member owned and operated operations that would be impacted as well. And I don't know that I don't see any mention, unless I'm overlooking it. Is there adjustment for any group permits, or how do the group permits get handled?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's a good question. So the only group use contract we have, commercial use contract we have that I recall right now, is with the raft company Flathead Raft Company, and the contract for their license or their operation for their commercial business is they pay a prorated 1-day fee of the shortest term license. So it's 1/3 of a 3-day rec permit, example. So if the fee schedule goes up, then correspondingly in that contract, they would end up having to pay a higher rate. Now that contract is completely a negotiated item. And so the base fee annually for a commercial group use permit with us is $35 for basically filing the paperwork and doing that. And then if a rec permit is part of the figure, is part of the operation like it has been for the raft company below the dam, then that can be negotiated, can be part of the a change in the contract itself. The current owner of the raft permit is requested due to impacts to her business over the last 2 years, especially last year with the COVID closures. She's been has recommended her contract be modified today for the next season to have a reduction in that fee. So that is something council can deal with on a one-on-one. Every commercial activity has to be approved in our ordinance by the council. And I know that you've done some delegation of duties for contracting that it might be in the future that's done directly with Rick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tom, what's the recommended increase in annual conservation line license for the non-member resident of the res?
Madam Chair, there is none. There is no recommendation for a fee increase for the reservation resident at this time. Other than the camping stamp. Everybody would be affected by the camping stamp. So descendant family living in Ronan and they go camping up on the Twin Lakes or wherever down the river, they would end up having their camping stamp go from $20 a year up to $100 a year per person that's 18 years and older. So they will see an increase if they're engaged in that particular activity of overnight use.
Guess I'm curious, based on Mike's question about that, was that a conscious decision to not recommend an increase on reservation non-member rec fees? Was that not recommended by you, or was that asked by council to not be included, or how did this come about?
Madam Chair, that was based on our staff collective recommendations on going after where the largest complaints were on non-member visitors on the landscape and who they were and where they were from. It's based on the sheer number of those new visitors on the landscape. And when we think about the number of residents that are moving onto the reservation, that number is twofold off the reservation. So that we've always had a lot of pressure from Missoula County and Flathead County off the reservation, coming onto the reservation and recreating. So majority of the new residents to our area that would be visiting our land based on our own internal data would be from those two areas. And so increasing their base fees would be providing more income for resource management, more income for you to hire gate guards or game wardens, and also hopefully reduce their visitation level.
Madam Chair, I guess I'm just not certain that we have enough information at this point about the increase in new residents. And maybe we have that information. I just don't, I'm not privy to it, but I guess my concern about that would be, you know, our resources across the board are impacted by what we've been told is a great influx of new residents on the reservation. And this is a you know, a brand new circumstance that not sure. And I suppose since these are annual regulations, annually approved, maybe that's something we can assess later on, but yeah, I guess the way I hear some of the concerns from the tribal members is, you know, whether we're talking about non-members who either reside here or do not reside here, there are some concerns about no longer having access to areas for recreation. So not sure if we can talk about that with better information, maybe that if you guys have more, and maybe you have to go through another cycle of permitting to really know, but that's where I'm at.
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Gillen, we have our annual sales report that we've generated. We provided that to you, I think, the first round of these discussions, and it shows the head count from the different areas. And of course, that's dated material, and you're probably correct. It might be more appropriate to have this season's tabulations versus last year during the COVID. Regardless of that point, if people feel it's the reservation residents that are causing the majority of the problem, then we can raise those fees too. These were just recommendations that we came forward to as the two biggest ones we could come forward to make a difference. We can certainly increase the reservation residents conservation license in the same manner, or whatever council directs.
Anyone else?
Comment.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Ellie, and members of the council. You know, I just wanted to relay the message that I received from many of the people up north. None of them were really interested in hearing about increased revenue. If we were to raise the fees for our permits, many of them just wanted to just completely shut tribal lands down because of a few incidents that have occurred. And if you guys can all recall when Francis came in and let us know about an incident that occurred up there regarding potential firearms, that's just one of many incidents that may have happened that we only heard about. And but regardless, this is a tough issue. Tom, we put you in a really tough situation here, and but I think the fact of the matter is our members just want to start utilizing their accustomed places that they can no longer use. And regardless of what we do, we increase the fees. We all know those people down in California and Texas, $100 ain't nothing to them, and they're going to continue to come in. But I think we need to be more cordial on shutting shutting just some of our places down completely for public use. So, but anyway, I just wanted to reiterate what was told to me by some of the community members up north. So thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Question, Tom. So the non-member resident rates, are those similar to the non-reservation or non-resident rate of 23 right now? Or if we were to consider, since we're making these increases now, maybe it isn't a bad idea to do a smaller increase. Maybe not the $100 for our local residents, but maybe some kind of consideration there. But what are those rates right now?
It's the reservation resident annual conservation license is $20 versus the $23. So they do have a discount. They have basically a discount on almost everything except for the bird hunting and camping. They have a little bit of a discount on everything else. So the one thing that's paramount in when you talk about our use of our own land is that, and this is what really has been happening on some areas, is that we just do not have the space. So it really doesn't make any difference what the fee schedule is, unless your fee schedule is so high it'll drive the use down dramatically. It's simply in those areas that are overcrowded or there's just really limited space in that recreation site, you really have to look at a total closure of public access to fulfill the needs by the tribal membership that want to use that same landscape. So a lot of areas we still have a lot of space, of course. In some ways it would assist with management to raise fees and try it to see if it reduces the level of visitation, provides increased revenue. But in some areas, it simply doesn't make any sense really to in the near future to continue to keep it open to the public if there's not enough campsites for our own people. The one thing that I would make a note of is that we have a lot of land and we have a lot of resources and we have a lot of places that could be some light development could occur for tribal member only use. It could be new recreation areas along water courses or at really nice outdoor settings. That's always an option for tribal council to consider in improving or increasing the capacity that we have. It's the carrying capacity of the built environment gets exceeded quite frequently. So you go to a trailhead or a boat launch, there's no room to park. You go to a campground and there's no space to camp. All the campsites are filled. And a lot of times, just to be fair about it, it's our own membership that fills it up, and at times in certain spots. And so really at that point in time, is there room to build more use spots for our own membership to use on top of the already existing tribal member use without the general public consideration.
I feel like there's just an overload of the landscape and the resources. And so I would like to see us do something for the price of the non-member off reservation community. I think that's appropriate. I'm not sure about the amount yet. And then also I feel like closing down a few of the locations that are used a lot by tribal members. And one, I can say Twin Lakes. The other one is off-roading on river corridor. I don't even know if that's possible. That would be something Dan McClure would have to say, wow, I don't know. That's you'd almost need a helicopter and motorcycles to go after all these people that are out there. But, you know, places like that are readily used by tribal members, I would like to see closed. They still have access to Dog Lake and Mike's Country and, you know, McDonald Lake and those. But, you know, with the resources of the water compact coming out, I think it's really timely to look at some of these locations like McDonald Lake where we can do an improved possible campground or other locations on the reservation. But yeah, it's certainly I want to see them closed, some of those locations closed down, maybe even Blue Bay. And then also off-roading, and there was one other I wanted to see, what was it? It slipped my mind. Anyway, that's where I'm at, Madam Chair, with all of this. Oh,
Thank-
and the other thing is, it's okay. I'll bring it up in a bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. I guess my thinking too, though, the income generated for resource management is always advantageous too, right? So increasing those rates a bit might still be beneficial, but so in light of the conversation about some closure considerations or the establishment of new camping locations, do we need to meet again on this in order to get these pieces done, or the regulation as it's proposed now, or is that part of the after that we can revisit? The emergency regulation, I guess, that you referred to.
Yes, the regulation process for us is normally we have tribal council approve the advertisement of our regulations because they're annual. So the entire regulation package is regulation both member and non-members open for comment, any existing rule or any proposed new rule. And so that's the 30-day process, and then we summarize comments, bring it back to council for your consideration. You modify, adopt, or not approve any changes, but we have to have the regulations advertised every year for public comment and whether there's any proposed changes or not as part of the process. Then council adopts that, you know, usually within a few weeks of the closure of the hearing notice. So you're looking at if you were to adopt something right now for public comment today, we would, as soon as we would really deal with the closure of a hearing would be the 9th of December. Council would need to take action then that following week. So at that point in time, then if they did, council took action before Christmas, then 30 days later, they would become active and we'd be able to do our printing. The longer we delay, just the more crunched it gets as far as time constraints on printing everything. The areas, the smaller areas like Twin Lakes, we can write right now a proposal to close Twin Lakes Recreation Area to the general public and manage it the same way as Lozo and the South Fork, and make that draft change or proposal in this regulation, take comment on it, or any other place the council would like to see closed. Emergency regulations, yes, we can do those at any time. They have a duration of 3 months and maximum duration, then you have to renew them to keep them going, or hopefully that emergency ceases to be present on the landscape.
What are council's wishes? Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I was thinking that this would be a good kind of like a pilot project where we're trying to figure out what the resource will handle. And I'm sure Tom and those guys can answer that, but just get a feel for what we're putting forward. It's going to be change. There's going to be closures, but that's due to the people that actually own the land. They want this closure. So yeah, so I would like to see us refine it, continue to come back with the options, and we can make some decisions, and it has to be made fairly soon, right? Because of the regulations that need to go to the commission, I believe, still.
Madam Chair, the regulation, when we're talking about the recreation regulations, they're not bird hunting or fishing regulations by non-members. We do not have to go back to the Fish and Wildlife Board. So we're not proposing any fee schedule changes to the fishing license or bird hunting license. So it's separate of that action. So this is the prerequisite just to be on tribal land, and the tribes have always kept that completely under their own jurisdictions, as we should, for this particular reason that we're talking about it today. So yeah, it doesn't, the only time constraint, Carol, is simply getting the fee schedule into the electronic system of the states, because we sell most of our licenses through the Fish, Wildlife and Parks automated licensing system, and making sure that we have publications that are printed and available for March 1st, and meeting the tribal administrators procedures ordinance timeframe for amending or changing an ordinance through these annual regulations.
Comment.
I would like to request maybe an increase in the reservation non-member fee, at least doubling it. And if there's consensus with council to do that, I'd like to ask that that be added. And the reason that I'm thinking, you know, I do think that we need to move forward with the conversation on closing areas and probably more areas as we talk more about it. But also, I think that, you know, the cost of maintaining and keeping up the areas that our residents use, whether they're tribal members or not tribal members, you know, we need to continue to take care of those areas well. And the cost of doing anything is going up so dramatically. I mean, look at the cost of gas and you know, all of these commodities are going up. The supply issues are causing materials and everything to go up. So, you know, everybody is experiencing that, and our resources need to be kept well. So that's why I'm suggesting that. And, you know, recreationally speaking, I think a lot of people don't think twice about spending a few $100s to go to a 2-hour concert or something, you know, and this is an annual fee that I think can go to good use. So that's what I would request. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just also wanted, just for clarification, I wanted to add to the list of closures, the Chief Cliff and Big Jaw and Hog Heaven areas. Thank you.
So do we have a consensus on the suggestion to increase the non-member resident rate from 20 to 40? Mike? Carol, Martin, you good with that? To raise the resident non-member rate from 20 to 40. Okay. Mhm.
Yeah, I would like to have a full council here. Well, as full as we can get it. How many are on? 7?
We
We're
have 7
missing
now.
2.
Yeah, we're missing 2.
Yeah, so I'd like to at least, you know, have the chairwoman in on, and Anita, of course.
Okay, so we'll circle back to that conversation. So with that, it doesn't look like we will take action on this today, but we'll revisit and reconsider soon. Martin, did you have something to add?
I had some.
Oh, Carol, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to be able to think through this because, you know, I get questions from non-members too, you know, and I think there's a way to explain it, but I need to think through it. And I just think when you have a full council to back it, makes it even stronger.
Thank you, Carol. Martin?
Thank you, Ellie. Tom, I know you were talking about kind of this week being a drop dead date almost or something. What kind of a bind does this put you guys in as far as getting the public comment period and everything? I just don't want to do this and have it be a mess at the end. So thank you.
Madam Chair, what we can do is we can take what we've heard today, revise the fee schedule to have that additional increase for reservation residents as a proposal for council consideration next week. And then we could develop the language to close the general public, Chief Cliff, Big Draw, Hog Heaven, and maybe Twin Lakes, since I've heard those comments. And bring that language back for you for consideration. Also, the only thing that worries me dramatically is that holiday season. It would be really great to be able to take and adopt something by the end of December that's a permanent, and then we can deal with it. So if not, if it's the first week of January, we could try to do that also. It only takes us it takes us a month to do the publications, get the bids and do that. So if we were able to, you know, have something done by the first week of January, we could do that also. But the sooner the better. We usually don't carry it out any later. We have everything wrapped up by the end of December always. So it's doable to take action next week.
Sounds good. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Matt.
Madam Chair.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, Tom, say you were talking about the Reed property here for a closure for foot traffic. Is that closure right there past Rebay Creek, or is that the new entrance going into the horse camp?
It's the entrance going into the horse camp, Bing. That's where we have it posted. That it's tribal members only can drive into that land.
Okay, I wasn't sure which one you were talking about because the other one is, I think it was private property, so I didn't know if that was the one you were talking about or not. So anyway, I just wanted to get clarification. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
And it looks like we have legal up now. Rhonda, Melissa.
Madam Chair, will be as brief as we can today. Dan will take over after I'm done with these two comments. I am happy to announce that the legal department has selected Daniel J. Decker, as the managing attorney to begin January 1st, 2022. And that we are almost up to staff. I understand you want to talk about it, but we'll come back. But we were full until I'm leaving, so we'll have to fill in behind Dan. But Melissa filled in behind Ryan, and we have Christina Corville back, so that got us up to full staff. We may have some other people leaving, but we'll get those positions filled as soon as possible. And I would again like to take the opportunity to introduce you to Melissa and give her a couple of minutes to say something to you this time. So Melissa Schlichting is our newest attorney. She is very, very much welcomed by our staff, and we're looking forward to working with her.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, to be working with everyone on the legal department staff and also with you. Several of you might recognize me. We worked together in the past when I was with the State Attorney General's office. And I know Councilwoman Langford worked on our Gaming Advisory Commission, and Secretary Bundy McLeod and I worked together very much on all the Missing Indigenous Persons Task Force and related issues. And so I'm very happy to be here, working with the tribes and working with you on all of the great work that you guys are doing. So thank you very much. And I look forward to working more with everybody.
Thanks, Melissa. Okay, Dan, do you want to go ahead and do the rest of the presentation? Are you on?
I am on, just had to unmute. So thanks, Rhonda. Thanks, Council. So Madam Chair, the rest of our items and issues we have today, and we'll try to be as quick as we can. We request executive session, please.